Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Bienvenue. It's Jonathan and I, because we're trying to start on time, and I think we have managed to start on time. And we'll see if anyone else of our tardy chums rolls in next. So tardy, very tardy, Jonathan. Jonathan, what should we talk about? You lead the way.
Well, thank you for letting me know that right about now. Anyway, so I guess we could talk about the five problem areas when integrating drones into large companies. I don't know if you want to talk about that and the
We
problems
can talk
there.
about that. I did read that earlier, and I watched the video as well. You tell me if I let me see if I can share the thing. I got to find it now. Where did I put it? So there it is. There. Come on, Google Plus. Let me happen. There we go. Oh, I tell you, I'm tired. I've had a long day here. Can you see that now, Jonathan?
Yes, I can.
Okay, all right. Well, let's just roll down through it. So, how have you divided up? So, is this your five sort of main points?
Right, yeah, those are at least five problem areas that you could think of when trying to actually integrate drones. Operations, legal, aircraft, pilots, and operating manuals. So that's just a quick way to kind of help conceptualize this, because each of those individual areas has its own unique set of problems. And so I wouldn't say this isn't just for large companies, but really like operations. So this could be in an agency, large police department, large fire department, or commercial large commercial operations. And even if you are a smaller service provider, it would be helpful to kind of understand what are some of the problems that the large companies do face when actually starting drone operations and scaling them out across the nation. So it's a pretty helpful article. Was there anything in it that stood out to you as being something that worth interest of bringing up and discussing?
Well, what I was gonna say straight away was, how many large companies are coming to you for advice? Is that something that's beginning to happen, or is it still smaller people playing around? Are big companies finally realizing they need RPA in their lives?
Yes, I think there are more and more starting to get in now to start large drone operations, because they're seeing that there is a great amount of savings that can happen across the different industries these larger companies can serve. So uh, they have a lot of them have been watching and kind of carefully figuring out what's going on. And since 107 has come out, we now understand the rules that we're going to be playing by. And so they're starting to set up operations, getting small pilot programs going to develop business use cases. And so that way, if they pass the business use case, then they'll start scaling it out and testing it across the nation in different environments. And so there are large companies that are doing that, and it's kind of interesting how they're handling the hiring of the pilots. So some are purely outsourcing, some are doing a hybrid, and some are pure in-house. It kind of depends on I guess, really the culture of the company. I mean, for instance, one company, I was talking to the guy, multi-billion-dollar company, billions and billions of dollars, and their model is actually to subcontract out a lot of the stuff and not do it themselves. While other companies, they just want to keep it all in house. And that's going to
Well,
prove a problem for both of those models, because how do you properly vet the guys that you are bringing in that these independent drone service providers? How do you properly vet them? Because at this moment, trying to find legitimate drone service providers is the equivalent of finding a pair of legitimate designer sunglasses at the flea market. I mean, you're like, yeah, you're not gonna. I mean, you're gonna look
well,
far and everywhere, and you're not gonna find much, because everybody's pretty much. There's a lot of fakes going on right now. Everybody has everything, and I mean, I just got a phone call. Was it 2 weeks ago? Guy called me up, told me kind of what was going on. They ended up getting a gig from a large company who didn't do the proper vetting, hired a drone operator. Nobody had insurance. Nobody had any remote pilot certificates. So the guys were just lying straight up to the
But
clients.
that's going to
They
be
ended up crashing the drone and damaging property and all sorts of stuff. And it was like, wow, you not only lost the time and money because your employees were having to deal with the situation, but you actually had your own property was damaged as a result of the drone crash. So
well,
it's,
then who's sorry to stop you then. So then in some ways, all right, so I'm that big company that's hired them, and I'll talk about this slide in a second. I don't know if it's coming up, but that I'm the large company that's hired them. Surely I've got a sort of a duty to make sure a minimum a set of so it almost what I'm trying to say is almost it becomes my fault, doesn't it? I should have looked harder or should have asked the right questions.
Yeah, so that's getting into some interesting type of tort law type of stuff. And so different states, it's really all over the place. And that's actually bad for the larger companies because that means that there's a possibility for a lawsuit there, right? As opposed to a clearly defined area of the law that would be in their favor, could prohibit or I guess preclude future lawsuits against him. So it's a very gray area, but there are certain states that there is a duty of at least some extent to properly vet the independent contractors you are working with, so that the public policy reason behind that is so that a person can't hide behind the subcontracted relationship there and say, well, we don't know, we didn't really care, and it's willful blindness. Right. And so that's kind of what it's getting at, that you can't just willfully be blind to hiring people. And I think even the state of Indiana, if I'm correct, they have a public policy where you can actually be held vicariously liable for the actions, the criminal actions of your independent contractors. And so that would come into play because some of the actions that are done by drone operators could be criminal under the federal statutes. So it just depends. It's all over the place. There's a lot of stuff here. I can't give you any fact because I don't know enough, but it wouldn't be wise to even get into that. But the thing is if there's a lot of potential landmines there, then that means that there's a greater probability that the larger companies can get in trouble if they're not properly vetting, if they're not checking the remote pilot certificates, they're not checking the certificates of insurance, and actually making sure those things aren't photoshopped, or that the people actually have their proper airspace authorizations or their waivers. And this just came up also, it was like 3 weeks ago. I was talking to another drone attorney, and we were specifically discussing kind of some of the principles of this article. And I was saying I would trust, if I were a large company, I would trust the drone service department of even my competitor more than I would actually a third party service provider. And they indicated to me, they're like, yeah, they had not been very impressed with the ones they've dealt with. And actually one of them was actually very shady. And I kind of threw out a name and they were like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, I have the same exact experience with that particular company. And so, yeah, that's kind of becoming the norm more and more. There's a lot of bridges that are getting burnt, a lot of posers running around, and the larger companies are knowing that. And while they're starting to know that, I think a lot of them are still very ignorant, and the service providers are like dumb clients, and the clients haven't educated themselves enough. So I would say any large company that is dealing in the sector better get together and with some of their team and develop a vetting program, maybe some people from the flight department, an aviation attorney, somebody that speaks dronese, if you will, 107es, and knows what to look for in before they actually go and hire these people, before there's damage done or there's lawsuits brought.
Yeah, or they just end up with a load of duff data. I mean, you could go to that whole damage extreme, but at the end of the day, they might end up with a whole load of duff data that's cost them money, and really for what good reason? So I suppose then that's a really good, we've sort of jumped to a really good reason why a big company might set up its own operation, because then it jolly well knows what it's getting when people come. I'm quite surprised that they are willing to, companies are willing to farm it out quite quite so much to start with, as to me the barrier to entry is so low. You get a Phantom, you get a 107, and to a large degree will get a lot of the jobs done. The next grade up, say a big fixed wing aircraft.
Yeah, that might change as time goes on with certain demographics in the industry, in the company might start aging or moving around, and they might start bringing some of those operations in-house, such as you might have a highly skilled lineman, and you might want to have him start getting involved in the drone operation because he's maybe not as physically able to be in the helicopter or something. I'm not sure, but
Sure.
I think there could be a potential for them starting to develop their own drone program, because at the end of the day, the barrier to entry is so low. A 107 is kind of, in my mind, the equivalent of like a security guard license. So you take a weekend course, you get it, and it's like an armed security guard, right? You have to have insurance on them. They're really just there to like gather data, right?
Yeah.
Scan for the bad guy, scan for the problem on the whatever, and then they have some liability. There's some asset that's $500 or more somehow assigned to them, right? And so that's kind of what I equated to. So really the only way you can prevent yourself being commoditized if you're a drone service provider is by getting into more specialized type of operations, which would require expensive, specialized type of equipment, hyperspectral, multispectral cameras, maybe getting into surveying where you have to have a surveyor's license, and you do have that. So I could see that being
I think that linesman, that example,
some barriers.
But that chap that's been sat in a helicopter for years, he knows the job, doesn't he? He has the real experience that's required, and he's the perfect person to now put the extended camera, which is the drone camera. He's the absolute bloke. Someone new to the industry, just waltzing in, really doesn't have a clue as to what he's really that linesman would do.
Right, and that's I think the problem with the drone industry is like there's a lot of these people from the drone industry coming into the other industries, and then they're starting to realize like, well, why aren't people wanting to hire me? And it's like, well, the realtors might just want to grab their own drones. The surveyors might want to just get their own drones, do it themselves. Oil, gas, flare stack inspector guys, they might want to just do it themselves. The utility guys, because so it's very, very low for them, and they have all this crazy amount of knowledge and experience. They can easily move in and start doing that. So, but here's the thing. They don't have a very good knowledge of the drones or operating them out in the field and flying them. So I think some of them, what they're doing is they're going to start gobbling them up as contractors, kind of a temporary basis, maybe start hiring these guys, and these guys will move into those companies to help start those programs. Why set it up when you can grab people who kind of already been in the area and then quickly cobble it together and get it going there, and then maybe start tacking on and training people to start scaling out.
Let's expand this slide that's up here, not me. I'm hoping you can see it. So this is your one with chain of command, internal, external, flight procedures, waivers and checklists. What that's, I think it's tagged manuals at the top there. So that really is the paperwork of all of this. Surely companies and 107 operators have got this just off pat now, and this is just a done deal, or is this something that needs a lot of thought?
What's the purpose of a manual? I mean, you kind of have to start at that and not just think of as a piece of paper. The idea of a manual is it's preventing people from quickly going off the top of their head, missing something and causing an error, crash or something like that. It's to make sure we have reliability there. And then what are these specific points in these manuals, these checklists actually trying to do? They're trying to really mitigate, counter, eliminate some type of risk. And that's really the best way to kind of do this. So when you say, hey, well, we're setting up a drone operation, well, we already have a manual. Like, manual, do you even operate? And then they'll be like, well, we don't operate. I'm like, then you don't have a manual. And then they're like, well, what do you mean by that? Well, you don't have a manual because you don't really operate. So that tells me you don't really know what risks you're actually going to be encountering when you're actually going out there and doing. You kind of have some maybe guesstimation of that. And if you start going out and operating, you're going to start realizing that, hey, we have a new risk here we did not previously identify. We need to take that information and we need to now plug it in to our manual. Okay, we need to have some type of mitigation. Do we need to eliminate it? Do we need to accept it? What can we do there? And put that in the manual. And you'll sometimes also notice that with the mitigations you do have in your manual, that sometimes they will breed and create a completely new type of risk that you might not have seen before, and then that needs to be addressed. So at the end of the day, you just need to go out there and start operating, and you're going to start being able to gather this data, and you're going to improving it better and better over time. And so really, operations manuals, they're going to be living documents that are constantly evolving. You're going to start tweaking, and then that gets into a whole interesting discussion here of what are the key performance indicators that you are going to be looking for when it comes to training pilots for aircraft, your drones. What are those things, and then how are you monitoring them so as to increase safety and reliability?
I suppose here's a bit of a, you might not answer this. So as you're a drone lawyer, and then let's say we have some insurers as well, if a company starts asking you to represent them or stuff like that, would you ask to look at them? Would you get a handle on the company by just a little look at their manuals and procedures? Without having to go too far. If they have good manuals and good procedures, then they're, probably be okay. And if there's less of that paperwork, then do you think you might be expecting to have a harder time representing that company?
Well, manuals tend to be much more of a kind of it's not the first step in the discussion, and normally when people are coming to me, they're kind of like the step one, and manuals are like step 4 or 5 down the line. And so they might have something cobbled together, but we don't even really get into that because we're just trying to figure out, I'm trying to gauge like what do you actually want to do at the end of the day here? Because start at the data, work backwards. What is the data you're collecting? What are you trying to do? What are you checking for? And then work back from there. So then that gives you an idea of what type of authorizations, waivers, training, manuals, all that stuff. And how might you want to even scale out in the future? Do you want to keep your drone operation completely in-house? Do you have, you're owned by a parent company with multiple subsidiaries and you want to service those companies? Maybe you actually want to create this completely separate drone flight department which can service other companies in that industry, potentially maybe even your competitors. Because they don't have a drone flight department that's set up. So it's kind of trying to figure that out, and then you start trying to work out a plan from there of manuals to be created for those particular operations. So particular operations have particular risks, which are going to be countered by the particularized manuals. That's why you can't have like a standardized manual for everything. You could probably have certain things might be helpful for like. For instance, like Chapter 1, always definitions. Chapter 2 might be a quick summary or something like that, or a errata sheet. I don't know, something like that. That way, you could pick up any type of operations manual and kind of know your way around it. But then the individual lines and stuff are going to be different depending upon the risks in that operation. It's
quite interesting that it's not a requirement of the 107 to have all this sort of a thing here in South Africa and in the UK. You have two things in operations, really. You have your pilot licensing, and then the company itself has to have systems, procedures, safety management systems in place to operate, and the suitable and according manuals. And if you have an emergency procedure in your manual, be for, say, a flyaway or something like that, something that happens when you do your flight test, which of course again you guys don't have, if it's in your manual, they will test you on it. They'll look, the examiners will look in your manuals and they will test you and quiz you on the stuff that's in there. So obviously you're quite lucky in the States in not having those provisions. But having said that, I'm not saying that you shouldn't then write manuals, because of course I do believe they'll save you money in the long run.
Well, I mean, there's kind of like there's the legal discussion there, and the FAA is requiring the remote pilot to make sure that the aircraft prior to actually flying is in an airworthy condition. How are you going to determine that? By merely checking it, looking at it off the top of your head and kind of feeling it and shaking it. Well, if there is an accident and there's an investigation, and that starts coming out, that goes more to showing that you were not making sure that it was in an airworthy condition, that you potentially were also flying in a careless and reckless manner with an aircraft that you really didn't know if that was airworthy or not. That sounds careless and reckless. You could potentially get 2 charges right there. It depends on how many flights you did that for. Oh, it's 2 charges, and you did 10 flights. Okay, that's 20 charges. And how much are these violations going per shot? So it can add up as time goes on. So that'd be like a legal discussion, but then when it comes to just practicality, professionalism wise, and safety wise, you would want a manual so as to ensure reliability that the items were actually done. I mean, that's why pilots have checklists. And I mean, I used to actually, when I was flight instructing, I used to teach my students doing a do list and then a checklist. And so the do list would primarily be you can use the actual aircraft itself as a do list. And this actually might be something some of the drone operators can do, and I highly suggest switching to the do list and checklist mentality, because it forces you to think, and it's actually 2 checklists at the same time. So it's redundancy. So for instance, if you're getting in your aircraft and you're, whatever you're planning on doing, you're starting up the aircraft, you're taxiing, you're going to use the entire aircraft as its checklist, because you're going to have certain, buttons and instruments and everything here and there. And so you would actually go through, do I need to do this? No. Do I need to do this? No. Okay, I need to change something here. Okay, we're getting ready to taxi, so I should probably punch in ground. And oh yeah, we're going to switch over to tower once we get over there and we're done with our run up. So I'm going to put in the backup, the tower. And then you move over here, oh, our altimeter, we have it properly set in, we're good. And what happens is it forces you to think, because what happens a lot of times when you use checklists, you become like a dumb monkey, and you're just like, and then you're not really actually thinking like, well, what was the actual purpose of the check? And so when you actually use the aircraft itself, to kind of like, well, this thing, what am I supposed to check on here? Okay, good. And you're kind of relating it back to where you are in the operation. Then once you're done with your do list, go to your checklist, and you go, check, 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 check. Oh, I missed that. Okay, we're good. Check, 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 check. And it's actually faster that way. You can actually do 2 checklists much faster than that. You don't have to worry about your thumb slipping, because that was one big problem with the paper checklists, is that your thumb like slightly goes down when you're moving over here, moving over there, and all of a sudden you just skip the line, and you only checked everything once. While a do list with a checklist, it's faster. There's 2 of them, and you're actually aware of what you're doing.
So how do you advocate that rolling out in the RPA world then? How do you see the guy with the Phantom doing that?
Okay, so you have a controller. Okay, so then you can start figuring out where you want to start on your controller. So what are we turning our drone on? Okay, so if you're going to turn your drone on, what do you always turn on first? You turn your controller on first. Then you're going to turn your drone on, because you might have some interesting situations with flies flying away and stuff. So you have the controller on, and then the drone on. At that point, you're going to then start thinking about, on the controller, what am I actually going to check for here? Okay, we're going to make sure that all the radios are on, and then we have our ground, our iPhone set up, we have the app on it, whatever there, what's a battery like, and you start working your way through that, and you're like, well, I think I have everything. Now you pull out your actual checklist. You just did your do list, your checklist, and you're going, good, good, good. Oh, I forgot to check this. Okay, hold on. Okay, I'm good. And then that way you're actually like kind of conceptualizing everything you need to check out on that controller. And then, okay, now we can go over to the aircraft, okay, well, this would be at least pre-flight inspection. Like for post-flight, you could, when you shut it all down, check the actual motors and the bearings to see if they're getting warm. If there's one much more warm than the other ones, then you can say like, well, there are some bearing problems here, potentially something's going on. I don't know why this one's overheating. You could check the pre and post voltage to find out how what the health of your batteries are. And so then we're just kind of conceptualizing, going back from do list to checklist, do list to checklist. And so you might not get everything checked twice, but you'll at least get everything checked once, and some things checked twice. And as you get better, you'll hopefully get everything checked twice, and you'll be faster. and you'll actually know
Yeah,
what you're doing, as opposed to being a monkey just kind of spitting it out.
yeah, I see. I'm back on your first slide there. I see, or on your infographic, I see you mentioned trend monitoring, data collected, SMS, safety management system. I presume that's what it means over there as well. And so that's all there in the basic operation things. But trend monitoring and SMS, that's very much the pilot should be in the loop, post-flight checklists.
Well, yeah, that gets into an interesting point there about the trend monitoring, about like what are your key performance indicators, like what are you actually trying to monitor. So that's interesting, because some people don't even really know what to monitor. You know, for instance, aircraft. If the aircraft's operating, we understand, you know, the motors are going, the batteries are going. We need to monitor those. What else do you need to monitor for pilots? It gets interesting when you actually start qualifying or quantifying trying to determine the quality of the pilot to fly in certain types of situations. So do you give a certain type of weight to certain types of operations, particularly like maybe, hey, this guy flew in a windy environment, you know, for every 1 hour, we can convert that over to, 1.5 no wind hours. And so we can kind of gauge, the strengths of these individuals and give more weight to certain people. Or are we doing time? Are we doing cycles, environments, stuff like that?
I can see quite soon. Okay, we've got great flight following and all the apps and all that sort of thing. It's great. We can follow along and do great things which we couldn't do 5 years ago. But I'm sure that another leap will be maintenance logs and trend monitoring from the aircraft. So the aircraft comes home and tells you, well, this is the sort of day I've had, and I'm feeling a bit tired on the right arm. You might want to have a look at that. I can see that coming in the next couple of years, and separating the men from the boys, as it were, and the more expensive commercial systems will then give these big companies, and they'll know about it. In like your car, like trucks, they monitor. Truck drivers are monitored like Billio now, and your office will be ringing you when you're going too fast, because they know as you're putting your foot down on the accelerator, because the truck dobs you in, and I'm sure that'll be happening. And
right.
And yeah,
I think so. I think there'll be a lot more of that coming down the line, more smarter aircraft that can start letting you know, or that there's some information going out so people know when to doing some preventive maintenance and changing things out and replacing them, so that we're not kind of doing now where everyone's just flying and hoping nothing happens. That doesn't really happen like with manned aviation, where you have so much of there's a service life of the on those particular parts, and after it's done you switch it out. We don't really have that as much now, and I think that's also because there's the technology is just changing so quickly that we don't really get a really good amount of data set off of it. Because how long is the Phantom 3 around before the Phantom 4 came around? The Phantom 4 Pro, and then now we got Mavic and Inspire 2. Then you're like, oh great. So, and that brings up a discussion there regarding how do you integrate these drones into the large flight departments. So do you completely upgrade, like when, let's say, the Phantom 5 comes out? Do you completely upgrade the whole fleet? Do you buy a few, test it out, and then you maybe upgrade your whole entire Phantom 3 fleet to a Phantom 4 fleet, because you might just want to stay one generation behind, so that way you have at least the data. You have about a year's worth of data of trend monitoring you've been watching, and then determining whether or not you want to switch over, because some of those might have especially sort of looking at cars, for instance, the first generation of a particular model is plagued with problems. That's why I'll never buy a car in the first or second generation of that particular model. I'll go for like third, fourth, or fifth, because those always just tend to be, they try to do something new and experiment, and then it goofs it all up. You might want to just stick with the older stuff. Buy the Phantom 3s and fly those. Once you go to the everyone goes to the 5s, you're going to the 4s. It'll be a lower, amount, and you could probably, lower cost, and they're all over the place. You get a big bulk amount maybe from DJI and have lower cost. So.
Well, here we are. You get your Black Friday deal. What is it today? It's
Yeah.
$7.99, isn't it, for a Phantom 3 Professional? I think let's just pull that up and have a look for myself. Yeah, $7.99, and that's a huge amount of aircraft. I've been actually thinking. Excuse me, I got a cold. I've been actually thinking what. Oh, look at that! I didn't know it swapped over when I did that. Anyway, I've been looking at. I've been thinking, God, which aircraft would I pick as the Christmas drone for 2016? And I thought when the Phantom 4 came out, I thought, well, it has Pro. I thought it has to be that. But now I'm seeing that price on the Phantom 3 Professional. It's almost a silly price. You'd be foolish not to. And you do have the benefit of lots of those batteries are in the marketplace. Lots of the props are in the marketplace. When you go to the new edition of whatever it is, the spares just aren't there for them. And yeah, you're right.
Right.
That will roll out into the big companies. So perhaps what we'll see is we'll end up seeing some sort of industry standard, like cars have the USB, the little dongle that you stick into them, and that gives you the engine monitoring, all the engine management system stuff. There'll probably perhaps be an industry standard for RPA, and then you won't have to worry about, okay, for a little while you will, but when the next few generation comes along, they'll all be speaking that same language, so you'll be able to pull that into your system regardless of whether it was 3 years old or the very latest thing. So maybe that's something you and I need to write. Well, can we write a patent out on that, Mr. Lawyer? Because someone will have that idea off us right away. But that's really what's needed, isn't it? It's a health monitoring standard for RPA, and then that'll move forward with them.
Right. I definitely think that is needed. Yeah, regarding definitely the aircraft, and then what happens in the situation if there is a crash. How does the company actually respond to that? So if you go over to the legal slide, so I think it's scroll down a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah.
How are you actually? How are you actually going to properly respond to some of these incidents? Do you have an emergency response plan? Is there going to be an lawyer involved? Why is the lawyer important? Because you have the attorney-client privilege, which is it has to go into the actual evidentiary rules. What can and cannot be admitted into evidence if there is a trial, and attorney-client privilege that protects that communication that goes on there. Well, that only applies to licensed attorneys, okay, not drone consultants, not corporate flight departments, not, okay, so you get what I'm saying? Like, that's only to attorneys. So you're going to want to have some plan there with your corporate attorneys, or maybe get an outside aviation attorney that has some familiarity with drones or at least aviation accidents, and be in coordination with them, and that way the employees are not making any discussions with each other, with the media, with anyone else, but only running it through the attorney, so as to control the amount of information going out. Because at the end of the day, anything said by an employee can and will be used against the company, and that gets problematic when you're dealing with these consultants that are not licensed, because anything you say to them
it can also be used
against you, because they could get subpoenaed, and they have no ability to say, oh, I'm an attorney, you can't use this, and then they don't have that. And so that's kind of the problem there, is you need to be very careful who you deal with, because, I mean, there was a recent situation where some people didn't do their due diligence and got involved with the person, and the situation went south. And I mean, I even just saw recently on the news, I just saw this yesterday, where a person was a defendant, hired a fake attorney to defend them during a murder trial, and they ended up finding out that that guy was a fake attorney, and then now they're trying to get the conviction overturned. And it's this whole nasty mess. And if you're going to be dealing with anybody in the legal sphere, I would highly, highly, highly suggest that you check the state bar they are actually located in, to find out if they have any disciplinary actions, or if they are even an attorney.
Who they say are. So tell us again then. I'm not in the States, but how would somebody in America actually check that an attorney was genuine then? Just run us through how we do that.
Here, you can do it on me right now. Go to the Florida Bar website. Just go find the
Oh, all
state
right.
that the
Okay. All right.
attorney
Let's
is
do that.
actually located in. Yeah,
So
find
I'm
the
searching
state the attorney is actually listed in. Okay, so I'm
searching
located in Florida.
Florida bar. Okay.
And then you can just type in Florida bar member search
The
or
Florida
attorney
bar.
member search, something like that. It's always the state bar attorney member search, something like that in Google, and something will pop up.
I'm just
Okay, it says what?
for the
Find a
Florida
lawyer.
bar.
You see that?
Oh, find a lawyer. Okay, I'll go there. Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's something
All right,
always
going there.
along the lines of that. Okay, and then you should be able to type in the person's name.
It's very slow. They don't want you to find a lawyer. But we might just take your word for it.
You need to find an internet lawyer. You need to find more internet, actually.
We've got we got to find. Oh, look, it can't be reached. There you are. So that straight away tells me watch out for. That says watch out for lawyers from Florida to me. That's what that tells me exactly. I don't trust.
Oh.
Don't trust a single one of them. Don't trust a single one of them. All right, so that's what you do. You get the idea. It's a bit dull. It's like, I'm going to paint this wall next to me now for everyone's entertainment. Okay, so that's what you do. So you go out, find his legal. So that's all good. So, all right, you're bound to be talking about the legal side of things because that's
weird. Like, why is yours not working, but it's working on mine?
Yeah, well, whatever. But there's another. There's another. Don't get offended. There's another sort of angle to this though. The accident side of it. Obviously, you want to talk about the legal side of it, but there's a human side of it, and I know from my aviation background the sort of plans you have to be prepared. You don't want to plan to, and I'm touching wood, I've never had an aviation accident, and you don't want your company to have an accident. You don't want that to happen, but you, unfortunately, sadly, you do have to plan for this and have it in the background, in the go bag, ready to go should something nasty happen. Now, I guess in our job, in the drone world, let's just throw out something that would be really horrible. That would be you cause a motor vehicle accident and somebody passes away. You fly into something. So you've got to be, as you say, you've got to have your lawyers ready to go, but you've also got to go for the human side of it, which is making sure that maybe one of your employees passes away, maybe even just for a motor vehicle accident itself, nothing to do with the drone, or was hit by it. Like that's happened to that's happened. That happened to the Schleibel guy in where was he flying? I can't remember. South Korea. The Schleibel helicopter hit the control caravan. Him and the other chap, they were no more. So you've got to be able to, if you're a big company, you'll have that disaster, we call the disaster management plan in place for that very reason. And I just wanted to put very badly that the human side of it's very important because there'll be relatives and friends and whatever. This isn't a sort of thing you can ignore. So yes, you have the legal side, but you have to get it together. Sorry, rant over. I'm finishing.
If you go to the go to the that link I just sent you to the crash article. So I wrote a fairly lengthy article on what do you do after a drone crash, because there are legal reporting requirements that you need to make to the NTSB, and there are also legally required reporting requirements that you need to.
Look at this. This is all going awfully well.
Dude, this is your side. This is you for. That's your side, dude. I'm getting. Wow, you're making it look so shady. You're making me look so shady right now.
Oh, hang on.
I would highly suggest everyone now go after seeing this and type in looking for the Florida bar member hangout. Maybe it's just your side of things.
There we go. How's
yes,
that?
but you can get to my website, of course. So as to prevent, I can't.
Yeah.
So
there we go.
Yeah, what do you do after your drone crashes? Because there are some required reports that need to be made in certain circumstances, depending on the facts, to the NTSB, the FAA, and you might want to even file a NASA report. So you need to know what's going on there, and you should have that already somewhat figured out. Yeah, NASA form.
Oh, NASA form, not NASA report.
You could call it, it's nicknamed NASA report or NASA form. It's because NASA runs the aviation safety reporting system, which if you file a form that goes into that, oh wow, isn't that annoying?
It's so annoying. I hate websites. I hate them.
Okay, so if you if you file that, then what happens is the FAA is going, provided that you fall into the, the specific criteria of the program, then what happens is you'll have a violation on your record, but the penalty or suspension will not happen. But that's only for specific facts. So you need to know when to file and when not to file. Because if you file and you did something like criminal, for instance, busting a TFR intentionally and doing that, then that NASA actually does not anonymize that data. They're going to actually just turn it straight over to the Department of Justice and the FAA to come after you. So that information is protected by NASA only if you fall into that program. And then furthermore, if the information is found out by the FAA through independent means, because FAA is not given this information by NASA. NASA is a completely separate entity. And that was why it was given to NASA, so you don't have to worry about, getting in trouble. But even here's the other problem, though. FAA actually requires you to report within 10 days after, the specific type of criteria is met, and there's an accident. And that gets into all sorts of problems right there, because what are you going to actually say to the FAA after you had that accident? Because they can come after you, and they're interested in it. Like, NTSB is not an enforcement body. They're trying to find out and figure out what's the probable cause of the actual crash, so that way they can make recommendations to the FAA so as to prevent future accidents. But they're not like going to bust you for a VAR violation. That's the FAA's job. So you need to know who to report to, when, why, and more importantly, when not to report on the NASA form. So that way you're not, basically putting a noose around your neck.
It's funny enough, a friend of mine actually, he didn't have an accident per se. The weather closed in on him. It's in the UK. He was flying, and he just voluntarily reported, just as a, hey guys, don't, this is what I did and this is what happened. And he thought it was under confidentiality and it was all going to go away. And he ended up in court. He ended up with the UK CAA. Took that and investigated further and said, well, you shouldn't, for this reason, and this reason, you shouldn't have flown. And the where I'm turning that to is they have a thing in the UK called CHIRP, Confidential Human Incident Reporting Procedure, where you do dob yourself in, if you will, but nobody knows. It sounds a little bit like this NASA thing, and those then get posted. You get them as an email to you these days, and it is learn lessons from others to avoid making mistakes in the future. And we don't have that system in the drone world. We don't have we do have the NASA report. We do have NASA reports, and drone operators can file the NASA report. So I would highly suggest anybody who's flying a drone read my article, because that's why I wrote it. So that way you know when to file it. Read my article. I'm not going to talk about it because I'm going to force you to read it. You need to read it. But that's in one of those websites that will actually open. All the other ones you suggest don't open. That's right, isn't it? That's how it works, isn't it?
Yes. You make it sound so shady. You're like, yes, you went to. I'm also the king of Nigeria, and you are a benefactor of $5 billion because the late king has entrusted to you. But if you will give us $5,000 and wire it to the Swiss bank account, we will give you the rest of the funds. Does that sound good? Does it not, Gary?
That's exactly how it sounds to me. Now, I've slid down. This next part of your thing says training manuals, waivers, and things like that. So, do you mean that the big company has hired somebody in and they can do the due diligence on the waivers and things like that? How will they check that the person really has that waiver? How would I do that, I wonder?
Sure, you could go to the FAA's website. There's a section that says FAA waivers, 107 waivers granted, and that's one way to do it. A second way to do it is you could also try to find out, get them to give you a copy, and make sure the name matches up with the waiver, because I have heard of some situations where people just print out people's waivers and stuff.
Wow.
Print out the paperwork and then just line say, I'm flying for so-and-so. So
wow.
Do your due diligence on that. If there's anybody's name involved, you make sure you phone call him and email him or whatever, and you find out, yo, is such and such working with you because he says he's working with you. And there better be a yes on that other end. Otherwise, that guy's committing fraud, and yeah, there's all sorts of problems there.
So then, yes, because I haven't done. So I was as Joe Big Company, I would still be in trouble because I haven't properly done my due diligence and worked out that that really is that person. And you say you've heard about that. Did you just make that up for effect, or are people really doing that, printing out other people's?
Yep.
It's a thing. It's a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I suppose then that's a problem with the FAA releasing them to the wild on that website because they're just giving people copy for them.
I told them that. I told them that. I
didn't realize I wasn't fishing for a "I told you so" comment from you, but obviously I fished correctly and found it.
Been there, done that, told them that, and then they told me back like, yeah. So
I was going to say, what was the answer to that?
They put it on there so that way people could kind of just learn for what's going on, and that was really they don't really care about the potential for people printing stuff out in fraud.
And that would be because
that's not a problem.
But aren't they getting backed up with people that are just like almost a shotgun approach to these waivers? Let's apply for everything. I want to fly my cat at night over a bridge containing 1,000 people, and I wish to do that every 500 meters for 10 kilometers. Aren't people just making mad waiver requests and lots of them at once? And then the FAA are just saying are too hard and denying it. What's your experience of that?
Well, right. There's a lot of that going on right now. People went onto that portal, clicked all the boxes, and then just fired it off. And then the FAA asked for more info, and then they end up getting rejected. And then they're all upset at the FAA. And then they
is that getting faster yet?
Again?
Yeah, that's what. Yes, because Facebook is the natural place to actually get your waiver problems solved. Obviously,
quality information is on Facebook. We all know that.
Yeah, well, we do. I mean, no, let's not go there. I don't want to go there. So, in your experience, is this waiver process still as like wading through mud, or is it speeding up?
Here and there. I mean, for instance, just today, one of my clients picked up a waiver approval for night, and that was filed 13 days ago. So, like, wow, that was fast. However, there are other waivers that I have filed that are, further back in time, and those have not been approved yet. So it seems to be at a different pace depending on which reviewer you are getting. So it depends on who you get, what you supply, and a lot of things to how quickly you get through, the system.
And do you know when you go through the process? Sorry, excuse me. Do you know who's reviewed it? Do you get a name?
Say again.
Do you get a name of who's reviewing it or who is reviewing it, and then by that you could extrapolate who the quick ones are and who the slow ones are?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to work on that right now, trying to figure that out. The only problem, though, is the FAA doesn't really give us any data in regards to when some of these things were filed. So that's kind of the problem, because we just have like an end date and a name or something, but we don't know when it was filed. So there's nothing to measure there. And the only way I'm able to measure these things is because I'm keeping my own stats and tracking, because I have so many clients that I'm just filing for, that I have my own little database. I just work off of like, for instance, time to file to time to ID notification. That's typically running around between 4 days. It's around 4 days. So you email, you probably get something back. ID notification on 4 days. That's what it seems to be. However, that's not always the case. Sometimes there are situations where the FAA doesn't notify people right away. So it's kind of all over the place, but the FAA seems to be getting faster at this, and also with the authorizations as well.
And are you are there any? I was going to ask you now. Is there any other sort of legal issues that are rearing their ugly heads now as we go down the 107 way? As another not really connected thing, have you got a handle on how many 107 pilots there are out there now?
Last number that I had was there was like 22,000 IACRA applications that were filed. So yeah, we're looking at probably something close to that, probably currently. The majority of those are Part 61 pilots.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting. The majority, over 50%. So that's going to be interesting going forward and seeing how that influences the culture. And it also might be that the large majority of the 61ers jumping in right now is because they don't have to study as hard because they already kind of know the material.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
ooh, jump in. While the non-61ers are like holding out going, I'm starting a business. I'm doing other things. I don't have time to learn this. You know, it's actually interesting is go to the Airman's database and type in people's names for people in the industry. I just did this recently, and it's interesting to see how people are talking about being drone experts, and yet they don't even have their 107 remote pilot certificate, and it is currently November the 22nd. So I don't know, just do that. Before you hire anybody, go and look on the Airman database to find out if they have a remote pilot certificate, because there are still people out there who are in this industry who don't have it.
And they don't have it. Yeah.
Well, even the people that are like working with people, it's just anybody. It just is just for fun research project. Just type in people's names. Yes, go ahead, type me in. I took it the first day it came out, so I got 100 on it. Just do it. But it's interesting how a lot of people didn't do it. I was like really shocked. I was like, you didn't take it? You didn't take it? You didn't take it? You're in the drone industry. Why wouldn't you take it?
Yeah, even Patrick's taking it. I mean, that's right. Even Patrick's taking it.
I appreciate Patrick taking it. I was like, thank you. Like he took it, you know, and so it's like, why isn't everyone else taking it? There's a lot. Just do it. Just everyone after this, just go and search people out.
This is a very interesting exercise, I suppose, if you've got more time on your hands and you know what to do with. But it's but interestingly then, so there's the
or if you're planning on hiring anybody, or working for anybody, or using their services, or buying drones for them, or being consultant, anything with them. If they don't have a 107 certificate, you should probably just walk away, because I would ask them like, well, why don't you? Like, this just comes with the territory.
So then we know from this, and maybe it said that on your infographic that I've clicked away from. But then there's 3 points as big company we could check. We've got the Airman's database, we've got the FAA waivers we can check there, and for our lawyers we can. But then we just know those sites don't work. But you can check the bar of the.
How in the world does that website not work? It works on my end.
Well, I'm saying nothing. So there's 3 ways for Joe Big Company to check right out of the box. So have you come across people claiming? But then if you claim the wrong name, then I guess.
Well, there was one time there was somebody that claimed they had a 333 exemption a while back, and I was like, really? Looked up their name, company name, nothing. They looked like they were just straight up lying. So, because I guess they hope that you don't find it, but more importantly, people do go and get waivers and the remote pilot certificate, but they then say they can fly in certain types of airspace when they don't have an authorization or something like that. So, I mean, that's been the general common problem that I've noticed is you don't have the airspace authorization. You just fail to mention that to the bigger client, you know, hiring you, such as in the case of that one particular large service provider. That just seemed to be how they were operating, where they would try to get somebody to go out there and fly, and the people wouldn't have an authorization. Nobody really asked, and it was just shady. And so as that gets found out, you know, then people start remembering those names. And as the industry becomes more and more trying to become compliant, people with certain types of reputations are going to be kind of, you know.
So when you say,
it's not going to ring as much for them, you know what I'm saying? Those decisions aren't going to be really communicated to them. We all know certain people who are shady. We just never say, hey, you're shady, because then that kind of gets us in, you know, situation with them. So we don't make that statement
All right.
publicly, but we think it and go, yeah, I'm gonna go over here.
So all right. So we know someone's shady, and we have lots of good evidence. What is the reporting system for said? Not that you should dobbing people in isn't nice, but they're unsafe, whatever. What's the reporting system? How do we report shadiness?
Okay, well, it depends on who you're wanting to report to. So, I mean, if they are claiming to be an attorney when they're not, call the state bar for that location. If they are doing legal work and they are not an attorney, call their state bar. Run it by them. Those state bar complaint hotlines and stuff are all free. You can call them up and then ask them, hey, I'm dealing with such and such a person, and I'm not sure if they're attorney. Can you just please help me out? Those are what those guys are there for. They'll go, hey, what's the name? Oh, yeah, we don't find them. And what are they doing? Yeah, they did this for me. Oh, that sounds okay. Give us some more info. You can find that there's people that are out there that will help you with that. If you are finding somebody that is potentially flying in a very unsafe manner with the FAA, I mean, a couple different ways you can do that. You can report them to the there's I believe a phone number on the FAA's website. There's also a portal that you can report to for like unsafe UAS flying. You can call your local flight standards district office and talk to their UAS specialist to let them know kind of what's going on. Those are a couple different ways you could do that right now. If you do notice something shady going on, and I would also highly suggest, I just caution everyone, if there are people that you're working with that are doing things that aren't on the up and up, you definitely need to be very careful how you handle the situation working with them going forward, because then they might use that situation almost like, hey, if I go down, I'm going to take you with me. I'm going to squeak to the FAA and tell them that you were there for that flight in Bravo airspace at that particular location, and you're going to get in trouble just as well as me. And so you got to be careful for that.
That all speaks to that's almost the captain co-pilot thing, where the co-pilot will watch the accident happen because he dare not countermand the actions of the captain, because he is the captain even though he's wrong. And it's you. I suppose always with these conversations, we're from an aviation mindset, so it's things we've seen as commercial pressure, if you want to put it in one way, and that again is something that needs to be the teaching of that, the human factors side of it needs very much, in my opinion, to come into this world, and again, it just saves you money if you get into these safety procedures and way of doing things. It'll save your company money in the end. It seems like a pain, seems like not necessary, and just madness, but it saves money. And again, sorry, I've ranted again. Back to you.
Okay, so I mean, I'll just highly suggest everyone check out those two articles. One on integrating drones into large companies, agencies, and then also
put a link down here somewhere.
Okay,
a link down there somewhere later. Yes.
Right, and so that can definitely help out people with navigating this area and kind of starting to ask the questions, to have discussions about these 5 problem areas so that people can save money, time, and lives.
So you're going to expand that out into each part of the nice line. I like that. Did better than I would have done. Each of those areas, you're going to put more detail on it.
Detail on top of the detail I already put in there. Like did you scroll down? I mean, there's a lot of text underneath that picture. So
you mean there's reading involved? Did I have to read?
There's a YouTube video on there, for crying out loud.
Hang on a minute. I've got to start sharing this again, because I'll tell you where I stopped. I can see a schoolboy error in this, actually. Let me get that back up there. I can see a schoolboy error now. See, I got to this bit, which is some blurb, and I know already that the guy on the left's dodgy because I can't find anything about him. Yeah, here we go. Oh, look, and there's even a video on the tube.
Scroll down. You scroll down. You scroll down.
Reading.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Keep scrolling. Just keep scrolling. See, look, I have some pictures coming up here. Oh, look at that. See, I got like
got some problems with your balls there.
What?
Is that one of those? Is that one of those things that you have in the office? Is that balls going left to right on bits of string? Is that what that is? I'm sure that's
No,
what
that was just talking about like subsidiaries and the parent company and stuff like that. So.
Oh well, there's a standard one there. Lipo fires, are they real?
Yep, they set
Yeah,
stuff on fire. Like you gotta watch out for your lipo fires.
Absolutely. No, so okay, so that really was the gift that kept giving, that page. It's a lot more information for people to see there, and so I'll definitely put the link underneath. And also, as always, your website always has interesting stuff on it. Look at that, we've hit the hour and we've waffled, and everyone else forgot to join in, so that's cool. That's also good. It's just been you and me together again. Oh, look what came in the post for me today. Prize for anyone that can guess what that is.
That looks like was a GPS receiver for a Walkera?
No, it's not for a Walkera. It's the new GPSs. This is people only ever send me the prototypes to break, because obviously I'm good at breaking them.
Quality. So you're like the guy that it's like Consumer Reports or something. You're just like to determine whether or not it's really rugged and reliable, right?
I know. If people want stuff crashed, then I'm the man to call. And this is an MAN RTK capable GPS, which is fantastic. And I've got not one but two, because in the Pixel 2 it will accept two. Hooray! So that's going to be fun to play with this week, and I'll be doing that. And I'll show you something else before we go that I've been playing with today. Look, one of these machines. Cool. Look at the mistake. There's a mistake I made right there. But just look, my first big mistake. So that's cool. So I'll be cutting wood. That's going to be great. Lots of cutting wood in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, I think we've got some interesting projects coming up with that as well. So amazing how technology works these days, isn't it? Look at that. That waffle took it up to the hour. So I must thank you, and hopefully see you next week. And I think Loretta will be back from China, and other meetings will be happening next week. So we'll convene again at 2100 GMT, same bat place. What did it say? Same bat channel, same bat time, wasn't it? Something like that.
Yes, I watched that a lot when I was a kid. The original Batman.
The real Batman. I consider that. I tell my boys that's the real one. This sinister new thing, I'm not doing with that. I'm not doing
I don't know. It's kind of cool with the old one. That's what I grew up watching.
Yeah. If you don't have shark, exactly, in shark repellent in your bat belt.
Shark repellent. We all know there's sharks everywhere that need to be repelled.
Absolutely. So I'm glad we sorted that one out. That could have been quite a cultural incident, an international incident, and we were on the same page there. So I'm glad about that. We've shared and learned this evening, and it's an important thing, very important. So on that bombshell, I'll bid you a good evening from tomorrow, from the future in South Africa, and I'll speak to you next week, I hope. Take care, Jonathan. Thanks, man.
I see you.
Cheers, man.